Hey everybody, welcome to today's training. This is TJ with ShopBot Tools. And here as you can see, I got a pile of bits and a couple boards, and what we're going to look at today is building ourselves a custom bit holder. So with that being said, let's look at the two different ones that we're going to get into in this training. We'll start out with doing a simple one here, just a rectangular block of wood with some different holes in it for different diameter bits. We're going to look at tolerances that you can add so you're not grabbing a really sharp bit with your soft fingers trying to pull that thing out of there. And then we'll get a little bit more fancy here into the circular version here, where we actually get into labeling it and making different tiers for different ones. So these are the two different bit holders that we'll go through in today's training. All right, let's get this started by looking at a hot mess that I have laying here. Bits laying around, collets, collet nuts. So first thing let's do, we've got two different ShopBots we're going to be setting this up for. A full-size PRS with a 2-horse spindle, which uses a larger collet than the little desktop with the 1-horse spindle. So you get two different size collets. I'm measuring the collet nuts. I'm measuring the collets. And I'm going to even get into measuring bit diameter for the shanks and then also the wrenches. Because what we want to do is know the exact size measurements, and then we want to add in a tolerance. So when we're pulling pieces in and out of our new tool holder here, we're not forcing them. We want them to sit in there freely. So measuring the board, measuring the tools, measuring whatever it is that you're going to build into your tool holder. And that's what's neat. You set this up for whatever you want it to have on there. So I'm just taking measurements for my two different sets. The wood one that we'll do first, we'll do with the for the full-size machine with the 2-horse spindle, and then we'll use the PVC, the whiteboard there that you can actually see me spray painting black because I want to have V-carve into it where I can carve down in and expose the labeling of where the bits should be. Just another thing to help, me keep track of the different bits. So let's go ahead and look at getting this set up. Well, let's start out here setting this up with the board I had. This one was just out of pine because that's what I had laying around, and I saw in the video measure it, and we had here it was 0.74 in thickness, and this one here actually going to zero to the machine bed, and this one is a single-sided, not a double-sided machine bed. Material size, bottom left corner, because that's what matches our ShopBot proximity switches in the bottom left corner. Again, it can always come back and change this stuff. So I'm going to go ahead and accept those parameters. And then what we'll do is just going to set this job up for the size of the bit. So I kind of have an idea. I'm just going to walk you through me setting up a job. I know if I go vertically here, I could possibly get multiple um, tool holders out of here, share them with your friends, or put them in here in the training area at ShopBot. There's no reason for me to have a 24-inch long bit holder. It's getting in to be too much. So I'm just going to make this one 6 inches tall, and I'm going to go ahead and go just a 6x9 size. And I can add my corners to this if I wanted to make external or internal corners. Just I'm going through my design. For some of you that are just learning the VCarve Pro or Aspire, whatever it is, I would recommend help and go up here to the video tutorial browser. Because if you're just watching me do this and you've never done this before, you're going to go, wow, is he going fast in there? So I would recommend using some of the tutorials for that. So I'm just going to set this up. I'm using the measurements that I drew, I'm sorry, the measurements that I had, and this here is for the wrenches, and those are the longer ones. So I'm going to choose to put them in first. Since I'm going to use a 1/4-inch bit, I'm going to go a little bit wider in my width in X, so I make sure that bit fits in there. And 8.5 inches was just a little bit longer than the longest wrench actually mic'd out at 8.25. Again, I don't want anything to be a snug fit here. I just want it to be able to go easily in and out when I grab it. So I want that centered vertically. I'm going to hold down the shift key and then shift where I want to vertically align that to. And I'm just going to give that a nice, right here, I'd say I want to, a gap in between these two. I could make I did measure the other wrench and it was shorter, but I'm just putting wrenches in and out of there. I'm not too concerned about getting them in a specific order. I'm sure there's some really interesting bit holders out there where people get pretty specific, but for me, I'm just going to go ahead and throw two of them on here, and then I'd say I just want a gap in between of, say, a half of an inch. Decimals and whatever your decimal placement is crucial, and so is whatever it is that you put in for a measurement. And there's those. I've got them grouped right now. I can have that unchecked, but right now it keeps them the way they are. Uh, since this was for our larger machine with the 2-horse spindle, I mic'd out the collet nut at 1.65 diameter was the circle. I don't want to again have my 1.65 is the exact size of that hole, because that collet's going to go down in there so tight. This isn't a joint where we need like a mortise and tenon stiff joint here. So what I'm going to do is go ahead and add a tolerance to that, and I'm just going to make that 1.72, so it's a little bit larger. And here again, I could sit here with the array objects and get these exactly the way I wanted, but I'm just hitting copy and paste and moving things over. I do usually rock 4 different size collets because I have an 1/8 inch, 1/4 inch, 3/8, and a 1/2 inch, and those were miking out at 0.85. And instead of earlier where I just typed in the measurement, if I didn't know what I wanted to add for a tolerance, the math here, I could type in 0.85 plus 0.03. That gives it a nice big tolerance on it, and there is my 0.88. And this one here, since I did want 4 of them across, I will just kind of say, hey, I don't want it quite touching that vector. Maybe bring it down. And in this case here, when I array it and I say I want 4 of them back and forth, a 1/2 inch gap is going to be too much, so I'll edit, undo that, make sure I have that selected, and I'll go with a 1/4 inch here. And 1/4 inch still is a little too much, and I don't need to worry about these collets sticking out too much further than the hole, because there's not like it's a bit that's sticking out. The collet actually tapers down smaller, so I am going to go ahead and just do that, bring that back, make sure I have that selected, and I'll just go 3/16 on this for my spacing, 3/16. There's my 4, and that just gives me, that's for my collet, and then my collet nut. So collet nuts, collets, and then again, I'm just going to start thinking about the different size bits that I use. I will tell you, if you're going to make a 1/2 inch diameter hole, right here, 1/2 inch diameter hole for a 1/2 inch diameter shaft of your router bit, you're really getting yourself in trouble as far as handling it, because you push that bit down in there as the shaft of it, and then when you go to pull it out, the ShopBot's going to cut that tight of a tolerance, that tight of a fit. So I'm saying what you need to add here is a tolerance. So I actually go ahead and I make these a little bit larger. I go 0.53 on that one. Let's see, as we work down here, what do they say were my 4 different sizes? We have a 1/2 inch shaft, do a 3/8 shaft, where that one's 0.375, and again, I just type in my 0.03 equals, and there's that one. Then my next one here, coming down, a 1/4 inch bit, and right here, instead of that one, I would add in 0.03, and that gives me my 0.28. And yeah, I do use some 1/8 inch bits. Those I'm not even going to put in a bit holder, because I'd rather those be locked away somewhere where they're not going to get snapped. So what I will do with these 3 is, these are the most commonly used shaft sizes that I'm using, and the 1/4 inch one is obviously the one that you use the most, and I can sit here all day long and get these exactly centered and lined up the way I want, but I'm just going to go by eye. Again, it is just a simple bit holder here. This one here, I wanted to copy and paste that. I'm going to have 2 rows of 1/4 inch shafts, since I do use that bit some more. So I'm just, again, eyeballing these. Let's just say we want 4 of these across with the 1/2 inch. I'm just going to go ahead and mark my X as 4. And again, I'll just try my spacing. Again, I'm just guessing, eyeballing. 1/2 inch is probably just a little too much. I'm getting it too close to the sides. I'll go 3/8, 0.375. And there's my 3/8 size. My 1/2 inch. These being a little bit smaller, I could probably increase this to 5 with the same spacing and get my 5 across. And then down here with the 1/4 inch, I could probably, since it's again smaller diameter hole, I can get more of them across a span. I'll go 6. And right there, instead of doing it twice, what I could have done was actually delete this one, grab this, say, hey, I want 6 and I want 2, being 2 in the vertical, and there's those right there. So I will go ahead now and just grab everything and center them all within each other. The only problem was up top here, those weren't grouped already. So I will edit undo those, and then grouping them by either hitting G or U to group or ungroup on the keyboard, or the icons, locks those in place. Here we go. Everything's centered within each other. And then just one little thing. I use screws a lot for a hold down. So I'm just going to come over here, draw a rectangle. Since I'm going to be using a 1/4 inch bit, I'll go ahead and add that radius to my side so I can see what it's going to look like. And that's just something I can put screws and stuff down in to hold it. So just a real simple bit holder. If I wasn't talking, this would be a pretty quick drawing to do. But what's neat about this is this one here, I can center it in my material, and note that I actually have spaces here to grab it and actually make copies of it. And I can fit 3 of them. Whoops, I'm sorry. I could grab the whole thing and copy and paste it like I was doing right there, or I could array it if that's the way I wanted to do. So I'm just going to copy paste. I'm not too concerned about it being perfectly lined up. I could have arrayed it all. And then really for this one, I was going to keep this as a pretty basic toolpath, and we'll get into the next one going a little bit more in depth. But I'm just going to sweep select everything, and I'm going to make every single thing on here the same depth, except for my 3 outer vectors, because those are the profile. So this one here, I just did a pocket, and I'm going to go 1/2 inch deep on everything. Again, just making it simple, so I don't even need to have the advanced toolpaths on. I'm not going to mess with up spiral or down spiral bits, because I am doing small holes. I don't want to compact chips, and I'm doing soft pine, so I don't want to rip. So I'm just going to use a simple straight bit. And again, notice on here, somebody had changed the pass depth to 0.125. So on this here 0.5 with a straight bit, you don't see your pass depths when you are in simple mode. So switching it to advanced, you get to see this stuff. So if you're looking more into this and you're a newbie with this stuff, again, I can't push you enough to recommend the video tutorial browser, because again, I'm going through this fast to stay on topic with our bit holder here. So if you wanted to know where all that measurements and stuff are coming from, again, help tutorial browser. But I do know with my bit here, I'm going to switch it to advanced, because I know I can do this in 2 passes with that soft pine. And I'm going to call this 0.5 pocket. I did with all my clicking here deselect everything. So I'm going to just go ahead and deselect the 3 that I didn't want. Hit calculate here. I can see in blue where it's cutting, in red where the ShopBot is traveling. See the preview, what it looks like. I'll switch back to 2D, close this, and save it. I'm sorry, come back to the next one, which is my material thickness and depth plus 0.02, or for a little bit extra into the sacrificial spoil board. And again, I'd like to use that same bit that I just used there for the straight bit. And I know I can do 1/4 inch passes, so I could come in here and say, hey, my pass depth is 0.25. Apply that and change that here. So also that is something that we can look at here, is changing pass depth. And you can look at doing that in your tool database. Again, for another training. Again, this is all other stuff that we would get into if you want to get into profile toolpath training. But for this one, I'm going to go ahead and change this, add my tabs to this, edit my tabs. I'd like to have 4 tabs of these, just make sure they move out. I'm not a big fan of the auto tab placement. So what I will do is I like to have mine going across here. Stays away from the outer edge. I like to usually put my screws along the top and the bottom edge. Just a couple quick spots. If I don't like where one of these tabs are, I can always hover over it, click, and it goes away, and then put one to where I want it. And we'll just call this through profile. And again, this one was just a quick real gone through, 0.74, 0.76. I'm okay with going 0.02 extra. And this was just a real basic one for you to see. It's tabbed. It's all the same tool path. There's nothing much to it. It's just it's it serves its purpose. Hold your wrenches, hold your collets, hold your collet nuts, and there is your simple. So let's look at this one out on the ShopBot. Here we are in action. So you can see this is on a full-size 4x8 table. It does not matter what bit holder you cut on which machine. I'm cutting the one out that I measured for that 2.2 spindle. And if you're ever curious what is your collet size, if you look at your manual that came with your machine, it will tell you with a 2-horse spindle what size collet you're using. And there's several different sizes that we have. So you can see here it's cutting the slots for the wrenches. It's working its way through doing the different holes. And the straight bit was just a good all-around bit for this pine material. And here it is finally doing the profile cut all the way around. And you'll see it doing the tabs here on the last pass. And that's what's just keeping it from, popping that final cut out. And this is all I wanted. I just wanted a simple bit holder to have next to my machine. I don't need anything fancy. I keep most bits locked away. I just want a few bits out that are my most commonly used ones. And I'm testing it before I pull it off the machine. Is there enough tolerance? I don't want to be grabbing those sharp bits in the summer when that wood swells up. So I'm making sure everything looks good here before I take it off, and I can't get it back on there lined up. So everything looks good there. And just a nice simple bit holder. Serves the purpose. Basic. Does what it needs to do, keeps my bits organized. With the basic one under our belt, let's look at this next one here on the right. So this was a PVC board. One of our previous trainings that we did was how to cut that PVC with feeds and speeds. And what I liked about this one was this is more of a bit holder that I would keep in the training area here at ShopBot, because a lot of people, when they first come up to bits, aren't quite familiar with what the bit is. And I will admit too, I don't know how many times I've grabbed a bit thinking, is it an up spiral or down spiral? And just by quick glance, going, oh yeah, it's a down spiral. Well, one turns to the left, one turns to the right. Geometry, you gotta be used to using that bit and working with it to know which one's which. So it is really a pretty handy one. But just for time constraints here, we're already 17 minutes into the training. I'm just gonna look at this file here. And again, if you're looking into designing this stuff, I do recommend checking out further into a lot of the Vectric tutorials. So let's take a look at this file and this one being cut on the ShopBot. Here we are looking at the job setup for the circular bit holder, and just to show you the job setup on this one, again 24-inch long. This was 1x10 they had out of the PVC board. This was actually, we had left over from our PVC training and knew it would have a purpose, and today it's making a pretty neat bit holder. So this one I did change and zero to the material surface, and the reason for that is we have a lot of V carving in this, and I want to make sure I get a nice transition with where I'm zeroing my Z axes in relation to how it's going to be cut down in there using the V bit. So that's the only thing I really changed here, was size of material and where I zeroed that. So I don't need to change anything there. And here you can see the 3 different pieces laid out flat, and you can see the screw. These are screw heads for the hold down. And the way, just to show you a little bit about this, how this one was designed, here's the original one where I actually drew everything. It gets a little confusing, and especially when you get into layers and you have everything turned on as far as layout lines and different things. There's a lot more going on when you have work in layers. But for a lot of you that are getting into projects like this, where you have parts that stack and you have multiple things going on, I really would check out the different options and tutorials on layers. They're very useful. And again, I have certain layers turned off right now because I'm not using those. And I went ahead and took my 3 different pieces, drug them out here, and laid them flat. And then after I get everything laid in there, I like to toolpath everything. Once I do that, I do turn off the wireframe up here, and I go to solid mode. And then that's where back here on the drawing tab you saw I grab circles, and that's where I know that I can place these 4, 5, 6 circles in here. And I know, being out of that pink solid area, there's no way the bit will ever hit that. And you're going to see in the video here how I actually hold this piece down, and these are screw head locations. I actually let the board sit on the ShopBot. Just the mass of the material has enough weight to hold this down, and you can see in my hold down, which is nothing more than a drilling tool path, I'm just going down in there a few thousandths, and just using a mark is all it's doing. And then just to show you guys the different tool paths, again, text, There's the first one. I will tell you I do cheat my text a little bit by giving it a start depth of 0.01. Usually gives me a little bit deeper of a cut. You don't want to go too deep because the deeper you give it a start depth, the more it has a chance of going together. I do like the little V90 that comes with the desktop starter kit, so I just use that for my V-carve. It's a wider bit, but I like just a personal preference is all. Instead of it all just being one pocket on this one, like our last bit holder was, there's three different pockets. There is a 1/4 inch pocket, which is where the ER20, right there, you can even see one of the model numbers of that nut. For the 1 horse, it's a ER20. Our largers, you have ER30s, ER40s for the larger spindles. So that one's a 1/4 inch depth of a pocket. And this one here is a through pocket. And then this one here is a 0.5 inch pocket, and then finally your profiles. So nothing too complicated. Just used a lot of the instead of the lineal rail. This time I used a lot of the circular copy and the copy along vectors for doing this. And the after session here with the Q&A, we can definitely get into a little bit more. But for the formal training, I would just recommend browsing some of the already done tutorials and whatnot for that. But all right, let's take a look at how this is cuts out on the ShopBot. Here we go. It is putting our little hold down dimples in place, and what it will do after this, runs out of the way. Those are just a simple little layout mark that we saw are safe in the drawing software, and now I can safely run my drywall screws in there knowing that my bit will not hit those. I like to hold this down good and flat, especially because I'm doing a V-carve into this. I don't want any bow or anything in the material. So remember, this was just spray painted PVC. You can see that it's zeroing to the top of the material, and now we're V-carving in. And notice that I did re-zero my Z after I put my screws in place, because it did suck that back down to the table. And here you are doing your V-carve, and this is, again, same as the previous tool bit holder. This one just has some text and some fancier things on it, and I did add the tolerances to the wrenches and to the different diameter holes. We're using a little bit different bit here because we're getting different material, but again, we're just doing our different pockets to our different depths. Do the V-carve first, doing our pockets, and then finally we'll do the profile all the way around. And this is just a little fancier of a tool bit holder, and I like that it's has the layout on there as far as what the bits are. And again, if I was going to take this to the next level, I'd go ahead and label it even more. So at the end of the day, or at the end of, say, in a school, you could go at the end of a class, you could say, okay, hey, we're missing our 3/8 compression bit, and that's $70 some bit. You don't want it just disappearing, so then you knew which bit was missing. So it's very useful too. And there's our tabs going around our last pass. And there we go. There's our three pieces. Being that it is PVC, it was painted. The PVC glue. Now I put a couple cheater little nails in the middle just to hold it in place. But it was real useful, and I thought it came out real neat. Held the different collet nuts. I'm sorry, the one collet nut up top, did 4 different collets, and I put my ball noses in there, my end mills in there, and then the rest on the bottom layer was just kind of a free-for-all of miscellaneous bits that are being used. And it did hold the wrenches really nice. They kind of actually worked out to be a little handle when they both slot together. They both, sit next to each other and just go down in that slot. So measure what you have for tools. Different ShopBots at different eras had different tools, bits, and things that, the wrenches came out at different sizes, but those are just two different bit holders that would be a really useful first project. It's real nice. You get the cardboard box that has the 7 bits in them. Then you start acquiring other bits, and the next thing you know, you're dropping bits or rolling off the edge of the ShopBot or off the workbench. So put them in an area like this where you can label them, have them organized, and know where they are or where they aren't there. When they're not there, you're looking for them. And that's a whole nother training that we could do. But I really do hope today's training was useful for you guys. This is just a simple, quick project to get started with. I would recommend everyone build one of these first and just organize your bits, your collets, and there's other people that make some really neat bit holders out there that add other things to hold, that hold into their bit holders. So take it, leave it. If you have any questions, we'll be sticking around at the end of this training for a while. For the recorded version, I will make sure these files are posted with this online, and I hope that you enjoyed it today and hope to see you back here for the next training. Thank you, everybody.